Sorry for the delay.
No, that's on me on that one. So thanks everyone for joining us. We have Coach Ferentz on with us now. Coach, we'll go ahead and start the opening from you, and then we'll take some questions and move through this.
Now, first of all, just good afternoon. Appreciate everybody joining at late notice here. So first and foremost, I thought it was really important to give everybody an opportunity to address your questions. Certainly a lot's changed since our last conversation, and released a couple statements and a video on top of that. So I just think it's important for everybody to have a chance to ask their questions, and I'll give you that opportunity in a second, just after a few remarks. Just to update you on a couple things. So first of all, I just want to thank former players that have had the courage to speak out about their experiences in our program. And I'm very, very sorry for any hardships that any of them endured. And if they didn't feel safe to speak freely, that's certainly something I feel really regretful about. Past 48 hours, had a lot of conversations with former players, both black and white, and in an effort just to learn more and to see how we can move forward. Certainly learned of their frustration, many of them, frustration, anger, and just about their experience here overall. And I just want to assure every player that their voices were heard, and their anger, their frustration has been noted, and we intend to do something moving forward to improve things. Our program is demanding. It has been demanding from the start, and players I talked to and heard from, I think, are largely appreciative of that. And to be appreciative of a program that, where they can come in, work hard, and show improvement and excel. And got a lot of that feedback and talking with our former players. One big point of distinction, in coaching and life really, but in coaching, there is a difference between being demanding and then also potentially being demeaning. And to be demeaning for any player to feel demeaning is not acceptable. We've been working at this for a while. Last year, just as an illustration, we relaxed some of our policies, allowed our players to wear hats, earrings, hoodies in the building. And that was just a small step, but it was a result of feedback that we got from our players last summer. And one thing that's become clear to me is that we have a lot more steps to take and more things to accomplish. And that's all going to be starting with dialogue, and that process will continue and begin in earnest tomorrow as our players return to campus. I realize fully we have a lot of work to do. We're all committed to that work. I want to say too that I'm thankful to our former players who not only spoke of our issues, any issues we may have, any problems and challenges, but they've also offered to be part of the solution. I'm very, very appreciative of that. I can promise you that we're committed to that. We're committed to starting that hard work and beginning it. And I think it's really apparent to me on Friday night as I started calling players, very, very apparent that, there's a real advantage to getting some former players and really pulling out or asking for feedback with the obvious difference that they're out of the program. They have a different view, different worldly view, certainly more maturity. And I found them to really be willing to speak candidly. So again, I really appreciate that. As a result of the start of those conversations Friday, it just really occurred to me that there's a need to have a advocate group or panel, committee, whatever you want to call it, compromise the former players. I think there's a lot of value in that. That's an opportunity we've missed, and we plan to start that and shape that as we move forward. I'm very appreciative that Mike Daniels has agreed. He'll serve as the chair of it. He just wants to be one voice, but he's got a loud voice and one that I appreciate. So we'll go to work in terms of putting that together and trying to figure out how we're going to make that work and to the best advantage. The bottom line is just, our goal is to identify in our program how we can make the program more inclusive, more welcoming, more safe for all of our black players and all of our players in general. And that'll be the goal of that committee. Also, I just want to add that an independent review, as I mentioned yesterday, will be conducted of our strength conditioning program and coach. And that will be coordinated by Gary Bard, our athletic director, but comprised of people from campus, not involved in athletics. And we look forward to that process. And finally, I just want to say, I know there's a lot of pride, a lot of love for this Iowa football program. and we appreciate that, and just want to assure anybody and everybody that love and loyalty remains as we work to move forward and try to make progress. With that, I'll open it up for questions.
All right, thanks, Coach. We'll start off with Mark Morehouse of the Gazette. Go ahead, Mark.
Thanks for doing this. How does this happen under your watch? How does your number two? How does this happen with your number two? And how does this pattern build over time? Where is your voice in this? Where were you in this?
Yeah, that's a fair question, and let me just preface it by saying this, and this is something I shared with our staff on Saturday morning. When we all woke up on Friday, we're a team that was coming off a successful season, had a great moment to finish the season in San Diego. And when we left campus on the 13th of March, I felt like, we were really well positioned with this team and with the program moving forward. So I was very excited about that. Obviously, a lot's happened on a lot of fronts since that point. And I think that's really one of the big lessons I've learned here. I've got to do a better job of proactively asking questions, seeking things out, asking more hard questions. And as I just alluded to a minute ago, not only of our current players, but also former players. And, my exchanges with our former players typically has been pretty fair, pretty, happy, if you will put it that way. Guys coming to the building, coming in obviously a good mood, but really, the bottom line is here, I can ask more hard questions and need to, and that's really the concept with the advisory committee, is to do a better job of that.
One quick follow-up: do you have an exit interview process in place? And I imagine you probably would examine the effectiveness of that.
Yeah, we do, Mark, and to that point, I try to continually seek information, whether it's all of our players. We do that every spring. Sit down with our players. This year obviously it wasn't possible to sit down with our players. Typically in the months of April, May, with our guys individually, March sometimes, but systematically work through the roster. And I think we've been pretty thorough with that. And we do the same thing with the group that we had last August, et cetera, but in response to the task force. But again, if I had one major takeaway from this weekend, would be the value of reaching out to other players who have played in the program, that care about the program, but are removed from the program. And I think they feel a little bit more free to speak candidly. That's probably my number one takeaway from this, just the value of that.
Thank you.
Yep, thank
Adam
you.
Rittenberg, do you have a question? Adam?
Yeah, sorry. Hey, Coach, I appreciate the time. Just when you look back, or even in some of these conversations, was there anything that you ever suspected, or anything that now looking back on it kind of raised an antenna or raised a memory for you that maybe something was off or maybe something was inappropriate?
It's not unusual for players to be unhappy about any segment of the program, including me. I think that's just part of coaching's world we're in. What we ask our players to do is demanding and challenging, starting with, earning a degree and trying to be the best players they can be. So, you always have those, but nothing to really alarm you or alert you. And I think really the magnitude of this whole thing over the past 48 hours, had a lot more candid conversation than I can remember in any period. And to that point, I want to emphasize here that we're going through a review process. There's nobody's presuming guilt or innocence anywhere. I want to get factual information and make sure that we have an opportunity to really learn, what any issues may have been and what the extent of them are, and the validity, certainly.
And just to follow up, I know I'm talking to other coaches around the country, especially white head coaches. They've really relied a lot on the black assistants on their staff, just for perspective. I'm just curious how you've done that in this particular time, either current or former assistants.
Yeah, certainly. I think any assistants that's black, maybe players maybe of color might be more comfortable to visit with them, but we try to rely on everybody. And this is a group effort, and I think you're not on our scene all the time, but last Monday night we had some really very candid conversations. I addressed the theme about what was going on nationally. we broke into our 6-team Hawkeye Championship teams. And I think there was some great dialogue and conversation that night. And then the next morning, our staff probably had the best dialogue it's had maybe in my 21 years. And that's everybody included. It's not just black, white. And I'll make this comment too. It's the same thing with our players. You know, one thing that's very clear to me, be it former players that I talked with over the last 48 hours or current players, it's black and white. Everybody wants to learn. Everybody wants to move forward and improve. And I think on the national scene, that was kind of my message last Monday night was, you know, anybody that's been paying attention here to what's been going on, you know, if you're not moved, if you're not different, if you're not changed, then say, you know, 4 months ago, you know, just it probably means you're not paying attention, or probably means it wasn't a big surprise.
Steve Batterson.
Yeah, thanks, Kirk, for taking the time. What's the most surprising thing that you've heard in the last 48 hours from some former players?
Well, it kind of goes back to the last question. Just, you know, I don't want to say I was blindsided, but the level of, you know, just some comments that I've heard from some of our guys. And the bottom line is we don't want anybody to leave here not feeling like this was a good experience. And there are a lot of things that come with that. So again, the part of being demanding, that's part of what we do. The game is demanding. There's no way to get around it. To practice it, train for it. It has to be demanding. But, you know, whether it's in a weight room or on the practice field or anywhere in our building, anywhere where we're together, you just never want to, you know, have a player feel, you know, mistreated or demeaning. And, you know, I mean, I'm not saying not happy. That's part of what we do sometimes too. But, you know, never want them to feel like they weren't, you know, treated with great respect that they deserve.
Chad Leistico.
Hey, Coach. Many former players, including prominent names like James Daniels, Jaleel Johnson, Akram Wadley, have named Chris Doyle and Brian Ferentz as the biggest problems in their calls for a cultural shift in Iowa football. What was the rationale for only Doyle being placed on administrative leave in last night's release?
Yeah, really two things. The level of comments regarding the two are very different from my perspective. And the other thing is that, you know, regarding Brian, you know, the things that I've heard about or read about, I was aware of. And I've had discussions with people involved in that. But, you know, so I think there are two different levels there. And that's how it stands right now.
Scott Dochterman.
Yeah, hi, Kirk. Thanks for doing this again. To have more than 40 players, if not more, come out and describe some of the incidents that they have, kind of in some ways is almost a culture of fear, that they're afraid to bring their voice up to you, to other people, to have some sort of record on this. Do you feel like there was a culture of fear over the last 20 years, especially pertaining to Doyle? And if there were issues, were they ever brought up to you, and were the players heard well enough, in your opinion?
Well, I think that sure the feedback that I've got has raised to the level of this past 48 hours. I would start by saying that. And I would also say, as I alluded to with the former players, you know, clearly there's not enough candid conversation, or the players haven't felt safe enough to, you know, to visit freely or give me feedback. And again, you know, to complain we're working too hard, that's one thing, but the line is, you know, feeling respected and, you know, maybe feel like they were demeaned. Those are the things all across our program. We have to make sure we do our absolute best. And everybody makes a slip. Everybody makes mistakes. We've all done that during our time coaching, but there can't be a pattern of that. And, you know, I owe it to Chris and I owe it to our players to investigate as thoroughly as I possibly can. And that's what the advisory group would do too.
Do you have a time, as a quick follow-up, do you have a timetable for that? And how many people are going to be involved in the interview process? That
I can't. It'll be independent. So my understanding is it will be people outside the athletic department. Gary will, I'm sure, coordinate everything. And I don't know how many people involved. I don't know how long it'll take. I think that's up to the advisory group to figure that out. Or independent study, I should say. I'm sorry. Yep.
Mike Kloss. Hey, Mike, you're muted. Can't hear you, Mike.
Okay, is this good?
Now you are.
I'm very sorry.
Yep.
I'll repeat and I'll try to capsulize this. Chris Doyle put out a statement shortly before this began saying, there have been statements made about my behavior that are not true. I do not make racist comments and I don't tolerate people who do. What is, in seeing the statements you've seen these 48 hours, are they truth to you? Do they ring true? And Chris Doyle obviously says that they don't ring true to him. What is your opinion about this?
Yeah, Mike. So to me, and I did go through some of the social media stuff on Friday night, that which I could find. Since that time, I haven't seen anything. So just first and foremost, I'm not sure everything on social media is real accurate, just like everywhere else in life. And it's really about determining what is and what isn't accurate. And that's really the long and short of this whole thing. And that's the reason, we want to have an independent study and let other people take a look at it and do the work that they have to do. Coinciding with that, I've been trying to work independently, again, reaching out to more than a handful of players. I can't tell how many, but it's been what's dominated my time since Friday evening. So, I'm trying to sort through that, and that doesn't mean everything there is factual either, but I think I have a pretty good feel for the people involved. And, I'm trying to paint a picture too that is fair, is encompassing, and I want to reserve judgment, I think, until that process is finished.
Rob Howe.
Kirk, I wanted to share one of the stories from Dante Mora, who played here in 2008 in that area, and it implicates you, so I wanted to give you a chance to respond. He said, Chris Doyle made a comment about sending me back to the ghetto. I called him out on it in front of the entire team. I was suspended. Kirk Ferentz told me that I was out of line and needed to apologize for standing up for myself. Is that story true? And was that a sign if it was? And was Doyle reprimanded at all for that if it was true?
I'm not saying it's true or not true. I don't remember Chris using that word. I've never heard Chris use that phraseology.
All right, John Bonekamp. Go ahead, John. You're muted.
Am I ready to go now? Can you hear me?
Good. Yep.
Okay.
Good.
On Friday night, when you first found out about it, how did you find out about it, and how quickly did you start reaching out to players?
Pretty much immediately. I'm not sure exactly how I found out about it. Well, somebody tipped me off. Somebody can't remember who. A lot of things have happened in the last 48 hours. But somebody, shot me a screenshot, I guess, of the first comment, and then just, So I really, that's when I started communicating with people that I thought would, have some accurate information, which, as you might imagine, included many of the guys that had comments, and just kind of started that chain from there. Yep.
Dennis Dodd, do you have a question?
Hey, you got me?
Yep.
Yeah, Kirk, thanks for doing this. After 21 years, after 21 years, if any of this comes as a surprise, how does that happen?
I think we're really living in, some very different times right now, very trying times. And, it's we've been going through a very difficult period as a country. And I think this, I'm not saying it's a spinoff, but I think people are tired, people are frustrated right now and they're angry. So I fully appreciate that. I addressed that last week and fully get that. Not that I'm paying attention to everything. It's the last 48 hours been a little bit blurred, but you try to pay attention to what's going on. And I think it's a byproduct. And if there's something healthy about this, it's gonna cause more movement forward for us as a program. I'm very confident of that. I think our players are wanting to open up. I think they are wanting to talk probably more so than any one of my 21 years. And we look forward to starting that process, and that'll begin tomorrow with our current players.
And you mentioned a cultural shift in the program. How would you define the culture, I guess, before this change?
Well, I think you could argue, at least in my mind, it's been healthy and based on results, that type of thing. But that being said, I mean, every program, every year, it's a new challenge, and there's always things to learn. And I would share this with you: the last 40 hours, I've learned of things that needed more attention. And however you want to break it down, I'm the one who's responsible. I'm the one who's got accountability. We all have ownership, but I'm the one that's accountable. And part of my reason to visit today is just to make sure everybody's clear that I understand that, I appreciate that, and I accept that. And that's what I'm committed to doing, is trying to improve this.
And Kirk, again, with all due respect, do you have any concerns about your job at this point?
It's really not my frame of work. But I did ask multiple players if they feel like I'm part of the problem, or if they feel like we can't move forward with me here, then I'd appreciate that feedback. And that's not what I've heard thus far, but my commitment is to us having a good program and having a healthy team and improving the environment. That's what everybody wants to see. All the former players I've visited with, white or black, just want to see us improve in all areas, not any one area, just all areas.
Thank you.
Josh Christensen.
Yes, Coach. Thanks for doing this. I guess my one question is there, for you, is it all anger, or is it sadness because this happened under your watch, or you felt that you probably should have done something sooner, or what? I guess, what is the feeling with all this that has come out in the last 48 hours?
Well, the first point there is I want to substantiate things before we make any assumptions. I think that's really important, and I realize right now it's a product of our times. Things roll fast. So I want to substantiate, and that's the whole idea. That's why I've been on the phone for the last 2 days. That's why this will proceed, because we want to get facts straight. The bottom line is, yeah, I'm disappointed. This is obviously very challenging, and it's difficult. And the bottom line is, it's like anything that hits you. It's hard. We want to learn, and we want to move forward and improve. And that's what I'm committed to doing. And that again is my responsibility. That's I've got accountability there. It's my job as being in charge of this program. And we're committed to that.
Tom Kakert.
Hey, Kirk, thanks for doing this. Some of the guys on social media have talked about the drug testing being unfair and singling out black guys. Can you speak to that, how that process works?
Yeah, I'm not sure that's a fair statement, but I am, as we move forward with our team, I am open to discussion about everything in our program, whether it's drug testing, anything that we do. I think that's got to be part of the conversation. But I think the way we've done it, I do feel like it's been equitable, and I do feel like it's been, fair in the way we've done it.
Robert Reed, question?
Yes, Coach, after former players started to speak out, did any current players come to you with concerns or experiences they had that they wanted to bring to your attention?
Sure. Yeah, and those were the conversations I was having last week from Monday till Friday, basically. I reached out to a large number of players and just encouraged them to talk. And then the second part of that was my plan was to start visiting with them individually starting tomorrow on Monday. And that still is the plan. Our players will be back on campus tomorrow. There won't be a workout. We'll have a team meeting. And then I'll start to work through the process of having a lot of conversations. And it's going to happen here for the next 3 weeks for sure. Just a lot of one-on-one talk, then groups talking, and then a full team meeting. So we have a lot on our agenda there. My conversations with our players, they've been very willing and receptive to those topics. And to your original point, I think, I've heard a lot of candid feedback from the players on the phone this past week. So that's encouraging. Some more than others, as you might imagine. And that's where I'll kind of start with the guys that were really free to talk, and just, we'll start there and then work down the list.
John Schaefer.
Yeah, thanks, Kirk. for change to happen, there has to be some self-reflection. How have you reflected after these conversations you've had with players in order to create change moving forward?
Well, they were positive last week. You know, they were positive last week after our team meeting Monday. But that's the point I emphasize again is, you know, if there's one thing that's really stood out over the last 48 hours, I was really impacted Friday night that I've missed an opportunity here over the last 21 years, perhaps, to, you know, talk to players, but conversations, not just, you know, how's your family, how are your kids doing, all those types of things, but ask some hard questions of the players. And I've missed an opportunity there. That's one revelation or realization I've come to this past 42 days. And that'll be incorporated as we move forward. That'll be part of the process. And again, I think there's a lot of value in getting guys that have been out of the program for a couple of years, different perspectives on the world yet. I can just share this. There's a lot of commonality with all those guys in terms of their love for the program and pride of being Hawkeyes. And, you know, one of the players I spoke with this morning is really upset about what happened in Kinnick yesterday. So, you know, there's a lot of pride in this program. And I think a common theme is they all want what's best for our team and what's best for the program. And I think there's a commonality, at least with the guys I spoke with, about, you know, they care about the program.
Nicole Arbach, did you have a question?
Nope, I'm good. Just listening. Thank you.
All right, thanks. John Bonenkamp, do you have a question?
I guess to follow up, what last week when you talked to some of the players, did you hear any of this stuff from them of what you were then hearing from the former players over the weekend?
No, not that specifically, and I think that's again probably is revealing a little bit maybe to any concerns, right? So I think there is a hesitancy for players to talk specifically about those things, and that's where I think former players can be more helpful. But yeah, on that particular topic, if you're related to strength conditioning, I didn't get that feedback.
Scott Reister.
Hi, Coach. With players reporting on Monday, do you see this as an issue that potentially divide the team, and what role do you have right now to make that from happening?
Yeah, I think anything that happens has the capability of dividing the team. And if there's, you know, been a couple of positives this 3-day period, if you will. Again, a lot of great feedback, candid feedback from our players, the former players. And then my other senses, and again, my attention shifted to our former guys Friday night. But the 4 days prior to that and the feedback I got from the staff, we just had a meeting here shortly before. Our players, we have, as I said earlier, we've got a great group of guys, and I think if anything, it's going to unify them. But I also appreciate and realize if we don't do things right, if we don't really continue on the right path, you know, anything can happen. That's true of any football team. But as I've told you in the opening statements, I'm committed. All right, and I know our staff's committed, and my sense is our players are committed, and I'm eager to visit with them during the course of this week and beyond, just to stay to that commitment.
Rick Coleman.
Hey, thanks a lot, Coach, for doing this, giving up your Sunday. I know it's a very important topic. You know, I was thinking, one of the things that you said last week was that listening, you know, throughout this whole situation with George Floyd, listening was the most important thing. And I found that very profound. You know, I'm thinking I'm a 33-year veteran of the media and an African-American. It's still difficult for me to go to my boss and talk to him about certain issues. Yep. Now these are young people, 18, 19, 20-year-olds that are on you. And I was surprised that a lot of your star African-American players were on Twitter and saying things like this, and that you really didn't know. So will you be a more active listener personally for these people and maybe encourage them to come to you personally with issues?
Sure, I think, yeah, exactly right. But the key component, and if I've had anything reinforced, it's not only listening, but asking more pointed questions and directing, you know, more so, you know, trying to encourage, not only listening, but encourage and give guys, you know, things to speak about. And I just want to make this comment too. It's kind of ties in with the question asked earlier. When we met on Thursday, or just during the course of the week as we met as a staff, we have got high caliber people on our staff. They care about the players they work with. They care about the former players, and they're equally as committed to us doing a better job. But I'll preface it again, I don't think we're doing a terrible job. I feel like our program's really pretty healthy, but our whole country has a lot of work to do right now. I think it's been very apparent here the last couple of weeks, and none of us are tone deaf to that. And that does impact every one of us and each one of us on this team.
Joey Danya, do you have a question?
Hey, Coach. Just wanted to ask, were there a lot of situations throughout your years with the program where players did bring to you issues of racial disparity and concerns, and what was done if that did take place to try and rectify that disparity?
I would not say that's been a major issue, but I would also couple that with what's impacted me this weekend is that, I don't feel players are necessarily going to feel free to come talk to me about things as much as we talk about open door. And I hardly think I'm a menacing figure, in the players' eyes. But these things are tough and difficult, and we've got to do a better job of seeking that information and just making sure that players do feel safe in here and they feel respected and feel, they can operate in a way that's going to allow them to do the things we're all committed to doing, which is really trying to grow and improve and push themselves.
Todd Kim.
Coach, you've got new players coming in about a week. Are you going to reach out to those families to talk about the kind of atmosphere they can expect when they get here?
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the points I made here with the staff this afternoon is, we need to really do a thorough job with our first year guys who are going to be coming into your point this week. And I will, that's on my list of things to do right now. I've got more pressing issues, and I'm not trying to minimize anybody else, but I'm working through a real long litany of things I'm trying to get accomplished. But that certainly on my list here before those players, get in a car and come here.
David Eichholt.
Kirk, first of all, thanks for doing this. Who was the first player that either you reached out to or reached out to you when, all of this really started happening? And, how difficult was that first conversation? Kind of take us through that.
Yeah, I can do that. I don't want to give specific names. I'll just say that obviously Mike Daniels is one of the guys I mentioned that. But what I did was work with the first people, and I'm thinking of one specific. I don't know if you can call him a chain, but as the dialogue began, I started at the front end of it, and then I, dropped out at some point. But that's where it all began, and I found the remarks to be extremely candid, and that hit me in the face with the first conversation that, we've got work to do here. Haven't heard that from that player, wasn't face to face, but directly like that, and it just alarmed me that we've got work to do in all areas of our program.
Keith Murphy, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Coach. In Chris Doyle's statement, he says he was asked to remain silent. Are you aware of anybody representing Iowa football asking Coach Doyle to remain silent? And also wondering the most important thing you feel you've learned, the single most important thing these past 48 hours.
Again, Chris and I have talked on numerous occasions. I'm worried about everybody involved in our program and his well-being, his family's well-being. You can only imagine the impact it has on everybody, what's going on right now. I don't remember ever using the word silent, but I think, I've always been a person who's, I think you gotta be cautious of what you put out. And I'm not here to tell Chris what to do. And I would also suggest that, when you feel like you're being wrongly accused of some things or, what have you, then, you want your day to voice your side of things too. And I can appreciate that. And I'm not here to, just like our players, I'm not here to muzzle anybody or tell them what to say or what not to say. And again, the biggest takeaway is just that, we've got to listen harder. We've got to ask harder on certain questions and topics.
All right, we just have time for a few more questions here. Scott Document, did you have a follow-up, you said?
Yes, I do. Thanks so much, Steve. I guess, first of all, Kirk, when you have this many players coming out against one specific assistant coach and he is trying to defend himself right now. Would you be comfortable having Chris back if the panel comes back and says that he didn't commit that? And if so, what does that mean for the 40 plus players who kind of attacked his character then?
Yeah, that's where, from my vantage point, what I'm trying to do is, that's why I'm making all these calls right now, is to get an assessment of people that I really, feel like I have a high level of communication with. So I'm painting my own picture, and that's the process I'm going through. But I don't want to leave it to chance or innuendo. I'm talking directly to people. That's important to me. The committee will do what they do, and it is independent, and there's a reason for that. And I trust they'll do a wonderful job. And then the bottom line is, if any of us can't do our jobs effectively, then it's really no use trying to do your job. And that's one of the questions I've had for our players, former players, is just, in your mind, can I do my job effectively moving forward?
And one other part is Twitter. You mentioned that yesterday, that the players are now allowed back on Twitter. Are they free to use it as they did before they came to campus, or are there restrictions?
What we talked about, and there's been a lot of things happening since last Thursday, but what we talked about, first of all, it was a result of 2 players reaching out to me specifically on Wednesday, wanting to join the national conversation, which I totally appreciated and respected. My request was, if we're going to do that, we open it up to the entire team. And I think I haven't seen the tweets yet, but my sense is a lot of people were interested in making their statements and sharing opinions. So wanted to do that. Now, as we sit here today, this is a one-time deal, if you will. This is a period where we've given them that opportunity. This is a historic period in our country's time right now. So I think it is important. I think it's very relevant. And I heard both those players, one an older player, one a younger player, very loud and clear. One was a first-year player. So that, by the way, was pleasing to me. First of all, that they called. Secondly, that they felt strongly and felt comfortable asking me. So, that's where that's at. But tweeting is on the list of things that will be discussed this summer for sure. I've got no mind to anything, as long as, it's not going to be a detriment to us doing better academically or as football players or citizens.
Mark Emmerich, do you have a question?
Yeah, Kirk, you talked about Brian a little bit earlier, but do you really feel like you could be objective about your son if it does come to that? And how would that process work if he does need to be investigated further for what he has done?
To answer your question, I do feel like I can be. But if that is a question, first of all, he reports to Gary Barta. That's who he reports to in general for that specific reason. But ultimately, I got to make judgment. And I can just assure you the judgments I make are based on, and this includes myself as well, what the program's all about are the people in the program. So, if we're not doing our job in a substantial or, quality fashion, again, everybody has missteps, mistakes. I get that, just like players do. But overall, if we are not committed to helping the team and helping our players feel good when they're in the building, when they're out of the building, when they're 10 years removed, then, every one of those is a failure, just like every player that doesn't graduate. Those are failures in our system for whatever reason. Those are the things we've been continually trying to address and improve. Every program in America faces those challenges. So, I do feel we can. I feel like we can move forward, and I feel like I can be objective. But there is a system of checks and balances in place to help handle that.
Corey, do you or Matt have a question from WQAD?
Yeah, I do. Kurt, you said that players were involved with exit interviews when they leave and things of that nature. Why do you think that they didn't bring anything up at that point in time, since they're leaving the program, just to make you aware of problems? And how much of a stain do you think this puts on the program right now?
Well, I can't answer the why part, but I was trying to make the point that, again, when players have a buffer, when they're out of the building and they're a couple years away, there's a lot, at least my observation, there's a lot more direct conversation. And that's really important. As far as a stain or anything like that, I think the key thing right now is let's let the process work. Let's let the process work itself out. I'm in the process of myself individually gathering information. I don't feel like my picture is complete. I'm not ready to pass judgment on anybody or anything. And I think that's certainly what the committee will do as well, on a different level, different plane. But, my first foremost concern is, my obligation, my responsibility of doing what I need to do and doing it thoroughly. And each and every one of those players that I've visited with, and they were white, they were black, there's a mix there. I owe it to all those guys, as well as all the guys that played here, to do due diligence in a fair way, just like I owe that to all of our players too, players and coaches, anybody that's associated with our program. That's what it's all about.
A couple follow-up questions. Dennis, you had a follow-up? Yeah, you're muted, Dennis.
Yeah, sorry about that. Kirk, you mentioned the formation of this advisory committee. What will be their charge? Who is in charge of picking that advisory committee? And what will be their impact on, whatever comes out of what they say?
You're referring to our former players, correct, Dennis?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. First of all, I haven't given it a lot of thought. Mike suggested a couple of players, which is great, and I've had people reach out to me. I don't know if word of mouth or whatever, but a couple of guys have reached out to me, which I appreciate. There will be somebody or a couple somebodies maybe from the department on it that aren't football coaches or players. But it's strictly in the formula stage, and I didn't have the idea till Friday night. So we've got work to do, but Mike and the other players we identify will help give us some guidance on that. And then, the objective is, again, to make this a better environment, safe, better environment.
And they'll report to you or Gary or both, or what?
On this one, the idea here is for us to have candid conversation, and we've had a lot of it in 48 hours with a multitude of people. I don't see why they would stop at this point. I really don't. That's my sense.
Okay, thank you.
And Rob Howe, you had a follow-up?
Yes, thanks, Steve. Kirk, I'm wondering at any point, during your tenure as head coach at Iowa, have you heard from any players or parents that have felt like they've received racist comments, whether they were intended or not, from members of your staff?
I can't recall somebody calling me directly, parents. Players, I'm sure we've had a couple. I'm sure we have. In my sense is we've addressed those. But I'll just say this. I mean, one thing that's become really apparent here the last week or so, week plus, is just the, racism is hardly a new concept. And as I said, last time we met, I thought it was kind of hopefully at the height in the 60s and early 70s. And as I said Wednesday, my regret is I'm not so sure we've made a lot of progress, quite frankly. But, my responsibility, my charge is to make sure it's not prevalent in our program. That is important. And again, I go back to our staff. I think we've got a great group of players in this, or coaches in this staff, that have the right values and the right concerns on their mind. So, it all starts with us. But yeah, I would not, quantify that as a major issue right now. But that's easy for me to say too, and that's part of as we move forward, we want to make sure if there is something being felt, we want to minimize that as much as possible.
All right, we're pretty much close to being out of time here. Anybody else have a follow-up, or anybody I missed has a pertinent question they wanted to add in here? And if not, thanks a lot, everyone. Thank you, Coach, for taking your time on a Sunday afternoon. We really appreciate it. Anyone else?
I've got a quick one, Steve.
Go ahead, Mark.
Kirk, are you worried that your coaching staff, I know you guys set a high standard, and I know that's what you need. Is this a culture of bullying? I mean, is there, some of these stories we're hearing, Jack Hallenberger just put out a tweet saying he was made fun of for ADHD. I mean, this is a culture of bullying.
Well, if it is, it will be addressed. That's my point earlier, was that fine line between being demanding and being demeaning. So that, and it's very subjective. It's very, but that's, I want to take time to make sure at least I develop a feel for it. If I thought that right as I said here today, I'd tell you. And I just want to make sure.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your involvement today. And again, thanks, Coach.